Hey, this is Emily from Survival Guide, formerly Tsunami Bomb. You're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we are back with a brand new episode. We've got a special one tonight, folks. On the show, John LaMacchia of Candiria. He's got a new band, LaMacchia. He's got a new album, Thunderheads. I have spoken to John, and we cover it all. We talk about John's history. We talk about Candiria's history. We talk about the van accident. We talk about John's upcoming album. We talk about everything. It's a great conversation, so strap in. You are going to love it. Okay, so before we jump into all that and the music news, folks, we need your support. Here is how you can support The New Scene. Number one, Apple Podcast and Spotify reviews. The reviews are coming in. We are up to 70 on Apple Podcasts and 66 on Spotify. Thank you so much to everybody who is submitting reviews. Give us a 5-star review. And if you write a nice review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it on the air. My goal is to get over 100, so keep them coming. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find us at New Scene Pod. YouTube, we have a main channel with the full episodes and a clips channel with clips from some of our favorite episodes of the show. Subscribe to both of those. Like, comment, all of that helps us out in the overall scheme of things. Follow me on Twitch at The New Scene and sign up for email notifications so you know when I go live. The schedule really just depends on when I feel like doing it and when I can do it. 99% of the time when I'm on Twitch, I play Warzone and we hang out and chat. We can talk about the show. We can talk about gaming. We can talk about whatever you want. So you can follow me there. And we have a shirt available for sale at Death Wish Inc. Search The New Scene. The shirt will pop right up. It's a wonderful looking shirt. You want it. Trust me. And the funds from the shirt help directly support this show. So thank you everybody so much who has purchased a shirt. Post a picture of yourself wearing the shirt. I'll post that on our Instagram story. And don't forget to support our sponsor, Iodine Recordings. You can check them out at iodinerecords.com. Iodine is doing a new Instagram live artist-on-artist interview series. Your favorite artists interviewing your favorite artists. They just did one last week with Nathan Gray and the Iron Roses and Travis Opal, singer of Hey Thanks. I loved it. There's more coming up. So make sure you follow Iodine on Instagram at Iodine Recordings so you can get notified when the next one goes up. Also, Iodine has a new Boston hardcore Spotify playlist featuring some of Boston's finest up into the year 2005. We've got Bane, we've got In My Eyes, we've got American Nightmare, we've got Converge, we've got 10 Yard Fight, we've got Cave-In. Great mix of bands, classic hardcore, new crossover hardcore, everything you could want. Check it out on Spotify. All right, so there's a lot of music news this week. Let's jump in. Number one, folks, very important news has been released. Sunny Day Real Estate will be one of the Saturday headliners at this year's Furnace Fest. And I'm so excited for that. Number one, because I will be at Furnace Fest. And number two, I've seen Sunny Day Real Estate, but I also haven't. I was at their 2008 run of shows, but I don't remember any of it because I was completely obliterated at the show. And then that night I left the show and got punched in the face out on the street. That's a whole separate story. Still don't remember why that happened. But listen, the important news is Sunny Day Real Estate is playing, and I am going, and I will see them. And I'm very excited. The Riot Fest lineup has been announced. A lot of huge bands on that. My Chemical Romance, Misfits playing Walk Among Us, 9 Inch Nails. Wow, what a fest, what a lineup. Also, Fairweather. Fairweather has a new EP coming out June 24th on Equal Vision Records. They have a new single, Untethered. I've heard it. I love it. I love the direction the band is going. We've had Peter from Fairweather on our show, so go back into our back catalog and check that out. I remember him talking about new Fairweather music coming up and the new direction. And I love what they're doing. This is Fairweather's first new music in over 8 years. So congrats to Fairweather on the upcoming release. All right, so we're out of time for this segment, but check back in with me at segment 3. I have attended the Interpol and Tycho gig at King's Theater in Brooklyn. I'll talk about that. I'm also celebrating another year alcohol and drug free. My clean date anniversary was this past weekend. I will share those tales in segment 3, but right now we are going to speak to John LaMacchia of Candiria and LaMacchia. Enjoy. All right, folks, we're here now with John LaMacchia. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Keith. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's excellent to have you here, John. You know, you've done so much in music between your rich history with Candiria and, of course, the upcoming solo album Thunderheads, and we're going to talk about all of that. But first, John, I have to ask you a very important question. How are you doing today?
Today I'm pretty good. Work's been kind of crazy. I do production work outside of making music and, got to pay the bills and everything. So work is picking up because it's the season, people are starting to do events again because the weather's getting warmer. And other than that, I am just keeping my eye on the prize. I have this record coming out. As intense as my schedule is getting, I'm very happy. So I'm doing well today.
Sounds excellent. What kind of production work do you do exactly?
I do AV work, basically audio, video. I build video walls. I set up lighting. I do sound and like all kinds of stuff like that. I build stages. So event work, basically event work.
So is it for live music or all different kinds of things?
All different kinds of things. I do everything from live music to corporate events, to fashion shows, to private parties, to WeWork meetings. I do everything. Anything that involves a microphone or a stage or a lighting system or a couple of lights, I do it all.
Nice. So you must be pretty busy because with that work, you have to be on call, you have to be ready, and you cannot leave until the event is done.
That's right. Yeah, it's pretty intense work. It's a lot of fun though. You meet a lot of interesting people. You meet other artists. I get to work in sort of my field. I've been on stages most of my life, and I've been, recording music. I have an audio background. So it's great to kind of work in my world, basically. But, obviously it's different than being a performer. So you kind of get like the best of both worlds in that sense,
So are you a New York City native?
Yes, I am.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, which is like one neighborhood over from where I am now.
Tell us about growing up there.
Growing up in Sheepshead Bay was how can I? Well, look, it was the 70s and 80s in New York City. Yeah. So this was a very crazy, wild place to grow up. There was a lot of violence. There was a gang on every major avenue. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of vandalism. There was a lot of crime. There was a lot of muggings. The subway was extremely dangerous. And at the same time, though, once I grew a little bit older and I started discovering more of the city outside of my little world, my little microcosm of a world. Like, living in Sheepshead Bay, I went to Shellbank Junior High School. All of my schools were basically in Sheepshead Bay growing up. I went to public school, so they just sent me to whatever school was near me. So it wasn't until I started going to college and then I started playing music a little bit before that I started learning a little bit more about the city and like venues and different cultures and different people. Once that started happening, it made all of the dangerous traveling on the subway worth it because I was going to events. I was going to like concerts. I was seeing hardcore shows. I was seeing concerts. I was going to, meet up with cooler friends. And, it was just a big change. And then, as things started Eventually, I started playing in a band that was kind of serious. We actually signed a record deal. This was before I joined Candiria. This is like lead from like the early 90s up to when I joined Candiria. We started playing some serious shows. Like we would be able to headline a club like L'Amour and bring out a huge crowd. Like we were doing really well. We would play like really notable venues. So it was at that point in my life where things really started changing. And at the same time, the city started changing. This was like the 90s. So now things were better. The economy was better. The city was no longer poor. Things were just overall getting better. They weren't great, but they were definitely better. It was a little safer. And then eventually I moved out of Sheepshead Bay. So that's really the end of that story.
How did you fit into all the craziness in Sheepshead Bay as a young man and young adult? Did you have to be friendly with the gangs to be okay? Did you have to fight for everyday existence?
Depended on what age we're talking about. If when I was about 10, I would say 10 years old or so. I know that sounds crazy to say that I'd be getting into fights and stuff like that, but it was really true. Like at that age, there were kids bringing knives to school. There were kids bringing like weapons to school. You had to be able to, fight. You had to be able to kind of hold your own. And there was a kid who lived around a corner from me who was a member of this gang. He was Albanian, I think. So it was a really weird city to live in because things were really divided differently than they are now. Like, it was like neighborhood to neighborhood. If you were Italian and you grew up in a certain neighborhood, you had certain people that had your back. It was just really strange like that. But there was this one kid, his name was Harry, and there was a deli that I had to go to pick up food, to pick up stuff for the family. I would have to go to the grocery store and get things. And it was all past this dude's house, this kid's house. He was a child. But anytime I went past there, he would chase me, and he was bigger than me. He was older than me. And if he caught me, I'd have to fight or get beat up. But then going to school, going to school was rough. I got jumped and, look, I had to do what I had to do, but I was lucky when I went to junior high school. I went to school with my brother, and my brother was feared by everyone. He was feared by his people in his own grade, and everyone in my grade and between feared him. He was known as a fighter and kind of the kind of guy you didn't want to fuck with, basically.
Yeah.
So that was great. Everyone knew who I was, and they knew who he was, so I didn't get fucked with. And then I went to he went to Sheepshead Bay High School, and he was 3 years older than me. And then my parents thought it was a great idea to send me to a different school, and I don't think they realized what they were doing when they were doing that. So now I didn't have my big brother, in the school, who was older and could kind of I always had, I had family there. It's different. So I went to Grady, and that's where shit got really, really hard for me because I didn't know anyone. I was new to the school. I was a stranger to a lot of people, and I just didn't have my people there. Eventually, an awesome thing happened. I got hit by a car while I was skateboarding when I was 15, and I got really hurt really bad, and I was bedbound for 6 months. Wait, not bedbound. Yeah, I was pretty much bedbound for a while. And I had to do an entire semester of school with a tutor, which I might add is the best grades I've ever gotten in my life. Secondly, it got me out of Grady, and after that, I went to Sheepshead Bay High School where my brother went, and it was just easier. I just knew everyone in that school. But I mean, as a young guy growing up in New York City in the late 70s and the early 80s into the early 90s, and even in the hardcore scene, in the punk scene and the music scene here, it was violent. It was really violent. But I lived Sheepshead Bay was relatively a safer neighborhood than a lot of other neighborhoods. So if I stood in my neighborhood, I was relatively safe. It's just a matter of when you travel out to other neighborhoods that you potentially could get into a situation where, you run into the wrong people and they just are not happy that you're in their neighborhood or something like that,
Exactly. I'm fascinated by New York and days earlier than I lived here and how things work. And, you say you lived in Sheepshead Bay, but you didn't even really get out to the city until, I guess, closer to college, right?
Yeah, no, that's definitely right. I mean, I was that's pretty much really when it started going to restaurants and starting discovering like different types of foods, and like my friends were turning me on to different things. It's college. It's like, okay, now we're getting older, and you're checking out new cool stuff. Like there's, all kinds of like art shit to do, and like go to museums, and, I mean, I just started dating people and started getting cultured and getting into different kinds of music. So yeah, I mean, that was a big moment for me. An important transition for me was when I started going away from South Brooklyn, and up to neighborhoods that had more culture, and up to Manhattan, which was the cultural mecca back then. Not like it is like now. It's kind of like spread out a bit. Like, Queens and Brooklyn have become like cultural meccas in their own way, in a sense. But Manhattan was where you went if you wanted to experience art and music and all cool stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the whole music scene has been pushed to Bushwick at this point.
A lot of it, yes. At least North Brooklyn for the most part. Us South Brooklyn guys are we're always trying to create some kind of thing, we're always trying to create some kind of like movement or something down here, but it rarely works out. It's not the same sort of, how do you say it? I don't know, in Bushwick and Williamsburg and like Greenpoint and North Brooklyn, there's so many new people coming in all the time. And they're just always looking for something new to do. So it's a little bit more liberal. It's a little bit more open. It has a reputation of having like more venues and places to go and things to do. And South Brooklyn is definitely more conservative, working class, a lot more immigrants. So I guess it's just a kind of a struggle. But for me, my whole life, I've always gone to North Brooklyn for culture and shows and concerts. So to me, nothing's different now, There are some places down this way, towards South Brooklyn. There's now Zero Space on
that I've heard of.
Yeah, that's a big venue. I just saw Battles and Quicksand there.
Oh, right. That's how I've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
How was that show? That must have been amazing.
It was great. It was fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge Quicksand fan. I love those guys. And they sounded fantastic, even though I think it was Zero Space. It was their first actual concert. So the actual PA system they had in there was really just not enough for the size of the space. But that said, they still sounded great. They still performed really, really well. It was a really great show, and I'm glad I caught it.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So when you were coming up, where did you fall in the world of music? Were you really into hardcore? Were you listening to everything? Talk about that period a little bit.
Growing up, I was really into like heavy metal. I was into like Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and like Metallica, and like stuff like that. Anthrax.
Yeah.
I was into like metal was like this thing that was just happening, and it was like incredible, and it was all new to me, and I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to learn how to shred. And that was really truly my first love was really getting into like metal music, and still to this day, like some of those albums are still they're still amazing to me. But then the thing that happened was I wanted to play in a heavy metal band, but all my best friends, my friend Tommy Trippi, who played guitar as well, and my friend Michael Scandato, who still plays music to this day. He plays in a band called Inhuman. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Yes.
And The Last Stand. He plays in those bands. We were all best friends. And at that point, we were about 13 or 14 years old. We lived all around each other. And we were all getting into music and getting into like learning how to play instruments. Mike played bass. I played guitar. Tommy played guitar. And they got into like skating. They got into like skateboards and stuff like that. I got into it too a little bit, but they were like really way more into it. We all started listening to punk, like Misfits, GBH, Dead Kennedys, stuff like that. But then they wanted to play like hardcore music, like Token Entry, Minor Threat. They were into bands like that, like Bold, Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits. That was really what they were into. And that's the kind of music they wanted to play, which at first to me was kind of disappointing because I wanted to play guitar. And although now I might look at it differently, but I wanted to be able to play guitar solos. I wanted to like play like cool riffs, like notey riffs. And they basically wanted to play like hardcore, like the first sort of generation of hardcore bands were basically like it was sort of like punk in a way, but the message was different, the attitude was different, but it was really based in like punk music. So I was a little bummed about it at first, but then we formed a band. We made a couple of demos, and I was able to I played. They let me play a couple of solos. I wrote like some like crossover riffs and stuff like that, and it worked out. So that was basically it. That was my first couple of bands were both hardcore bands.
So talk about joining forces with Candiria. When does it happen? How does it happen?
Candiria and my old band Dead Air, we were buddies. We rehearsed in the same rehearsal spot, which was called Ace London in Marine Park, South Brooklyn, once again. And we had similar friends, and we were always rehearsing. We rehearsed a lot. We played music a lot at that space. Candiria was just the same. We spent a lot of time playing music in the studio, whether we had shows coming up or not. We just were like obsessed with music, as young musicians can be, And so we just became friends. And I think the first thing that wound up happening was Ken. Ken also worked at the studio, so he would come in and like check on us and listen to the band, and he knew the music, and he was actually into it. He was really into the band. And I remember one time we got. This is when we got signed. This was like later on. We recorded a couple of demos, and then after that, we went in. Actually, we got picked up by a record label called Wonderland Records. And we started writing to make a full-length album. And Ken obviously got wind of this, and he was excited for us. And he was, at this point, Candiria and my old band Dead Air, we had played shows together. It was like back in the day when a mixed bill, like a band like Candiria and my like grunge prog band, like playing a show together was not the wildest idea. It was mixed bills just happened all the time. They really did. So we would play with Candiria, and Ken was always around, and he enjoyed the music a lot. He even would get on stage and play some percussion with us. He would play his didgeridoo, and he would, he was always getting involved in one way or another. And then when it came time for us to go record our album at Applehead Music upstate, he was kind enough to drive us and stay with us for a few days while we did this. And I never really thought about how kind of awesome that was of him, for him to just take time out of his life and just be like, all right. I mean, we were all young kids, and I'm sure he was like super psyched to go to like Applehead Studios, and hang and check out the session. We were all like broke young people, so, and Applehead was like a big deal. So I think he did get a lot out of it, and he did play some keys on the album. He got to jump in and get involved a little bit. So, but I'm really still, to this day, I look back on that, and I'm super grateful that we had someone who was willing to like take his 3 days out of his life and just go up there with us and hang so we can get there and do this. It was really kind of cool of him,
Yeah.
So needless to say, moving on, the closer I got to Ken and we got to Ken, he had this music project called Intrigue, which was all fully improvised music, which it wasn't jazz by any means, but it was improvised, ambient, weird, out there music. And it was Ken and this dude, Joe, and they would just get in a room. Ken would play keys. He would play synth. He would play like ambient synth music. And this guy, Joe Bacardi, would play like these drum patterns with like mallets, like really tribal-y, like ambient stuff. And I sat in on a session one time, and, we all smoked a bunch of weed, and I just sat in on the session, and I loved it. It was a beautiful thing to experience. And, having a great amount of respect for Ken as it was, I was obviously interested in jumping in on a session. So, with Ken's disclaimer to me being like, this isn't like heavy metal music, man. You can't just like solo over everything. I was like, dude, I know, I get it. I fucking get it, bro. This is ambient stuff. I'm aware. So I did a session with them, and it went really well. As a matter of fact, it went well enough for him to invite me back. And we did a bunch of those recordings, which I still have. I got to go through them. The dude, Joe Bacardi, sent me every single thing they ever recorded. So I have it all in my apartment.
Has any of that ever been released?
No, and I have to get that out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't understand. It's like a drawer. It's like an entire drawer filled with CDs that he sent me. He was like, here, dude, do something with it. which, throw it on the pile of 100,000 things I have, planned. So from there, what wound up happening was I wound up getting into yet another serious accident. I wound up getting into an accident on Christmas Day in 1996. I was leaving my father's house, my mother and father's house, and we were driving a very short distance in Long Island to my Aunt Mickey's house. And in that sort of 5-minute drive, I was in the passenger seat. My then girlfriend, Diala, was sitting she was driving, and some guy was trying to like make the light, and my dad made the turn, and he sped up, and he had to swerve out of the way of my dad because he just like came out of nowhere, and he drove like head on into us. And
Ugh.
he, it was insane how hard he hit us. He, I don't think I think he tried to hit his brakes like really last second, but we got hit so hard, and we started spinning and everything. Whatever. Needless to say, I wound up in the hospital with a broken femur, and it was just a really terrible experience. And by the time January rolled around, I could no longer go back to Brooklyn and live there. I had to go live with my parents because I couldn't walk. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I think Dead Air has run its course. My band Dead Air, like my bass player Mike went off and started doing some tours with Marauder. And slowly but surely, like the record deal we had, it kind of fizzled out. And I was going to quit music, honestly. I was really at a point where it's like, you know what? I tried this. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and nothing really came of it. And I think it's time to just maybe consider going to school or something and focusing on something else. And I told my dad I was going to quit music. And he's like, no, don't quit. You stick with it. You have to stick with it. You're hard. You're a hard worker. You're good at what you do. Something good will come of it. And I was like, all right, well, okay, I'll think about sticking around then. And and then literally like a week later, I got a call from Carly. And the original guitar player, Chris Puma, decided he didn't want to be in the band. He didn't want to tour. He didn't want to do like, the guys in Candiria, most of the guys in Candiria, they wanted to become a big band. They wanted to become a serious band. They wanted to tour. They had these like dreams and aspirations. And Chris was only interested in learning how to play music and learning how to play guitar, which I really respect him for that because he was a very studious like musician. And he was extremely talented. But his interest in music was a lot different than the rest of the guys and me for that matter. So when Carly called me, I was like, yeah, of course. I mean, at that point, Candiria was already like, they were like, just by putting out one album, they put out Surrealistic Madness, the first album. They already were like the most, everyone, if you knew the band, you were absolutely like blown away by them. They were like,
yeah,
they were just like, they just made a record. They changed the game, basically. I mean, literally the band did.
They really did. They completely stand on their own in terms of everything that was going on at the time. There's no other band that sounds like Candiria.
It's true. It really is true. And I can say that because they created this sound and I was not a part of that. So as a fan of the band before I joined, I really feel it is true. And it's something that Mike said some years ago. You take Candiria away, you take away a musical style. You lose part of the musical spectrum in a way. And I do really truly feel that it's 100% accurate, So at that point, when Carly asked me, I was really floored and excited. And it was, of course, because, Ken was like, get John. John will be perfect for this. But the challenge was I didn't have a home. I couldn't barely walk. I was walking around. I was still on crutches. So there was a time period there where I won't say I was homeless because I always had someone's floor to crash on, but I really did. I didn't have my own place to live. I couldn't get back and forth from Long Island. So if I decided to go to Brooklyn and stay there, I kind of had to just crash on someone's floor. And for a while there, it was pretty rough. I actually wound up moving into an apartment, and the bedroom I moved into in Midwood, there was no windows because they were all broken and smashed out. And all I had was a mattress on the floor, and I had like a bag of clothes. It's really like, in a way, it's kind of like that really, it's kind of like that same old story about like, you just got like a fucking duffel bag and your dreams and shit like that. I know it sounds corny, but that's really how it was for some time.
Yeah.
And then I got kicked out of that apartment.
Why?
The landlord wanted to rent it to, I think the usual story in New York City, when someone owns a building, eventually they want their family to move in,
Yeah.
or their
Yeah.
family wants to move in and they don't really have a choice.
Right.
It happens pretty often. So that was the case with this apartment I was living in. I wasn't totally disappointed because I needed to get the fuck out of there. Oh, from there, Eric Matthews, my guitar player, at the time, he was looking to move into an apartment as well. He was at the time for many years living in his basement, his parents' basement for many years. And he was like at a point where he was like, all right, I want to move out of here. I want to get an apartment. And our mutual friend, Jason Lara, who has performed on some of the Candiria albums as well. We had our little crew. We had like a big extended family of musicians and stuff. After I left that apartment that I got pushed out of, my then girlfriend, that girl Diala that I got into the accident with,
Yeah.
her mom let me live with them for a while, which was kind of wild. And then I eventually wound up moving into an apartment with Jason and Eric. And we wound up, like, I finally had my feet on the ground, planted firmly on the ground. And I was able to stay in the band and stay in Brooklyn and get on the road with those guys.
Nice, nice. And yeah, it's amazing what we do to pursue our dreams. I've heard this story before where someone has to live in a car or someone has to live in an empty room while they're making ends meet to get this thing done. And you did that.
Sure. Yeah. 100%, man. I mean, I can't, I'm one of many who have made whatever sacrifices they felt they needed to make in order to, do music and make music. So I only did what I felt I needed to do.
Which is great because you were almost out. And surprisingly, your dad asked you to stay in. You would think parents were like, yeah, go to college, enough with this music shit. But your dad encouraged you.
Yeah, he did. It's funny because I don't know if you know this, but my dad was the reason I played music in the first place.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, I don't know. My dad, I'm the fourth. I'm the baby of four kids.
Yeah.
And I think what my dad wanted for me was just something different. He wanted me to try different things. And he knew I loved music. He knew I loved art. He wanted me to try different things. He thought at first I was going to be a baseball player. He got me into Little League. I was treated differently than my siblings. I feel like, I feel very fortunate, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, man, nobody else got to go to Little League. Nobody else got anything special. But my dad did. He took it like an interest in me, and he wanted me to do something different. I think in his mind, after all he'd done his whole life, he wanted me to, quote unquote, in his words, not work another day in my life. Well, Pops, I have 2 jobs. I own my own business and I'm a musician. That's what he wanted for me. He wanted me to have something like that. If he always put it this way. It's like, that classic saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's not true by any means.
You'll work more, but it's not as shitty.
No, it's not as shitty. You're right. But that was his thought process. And then after the baseball thing, didn't work out, I lost the big game. I lost the big World Series of Little League for my team. A ground ball right between my legs. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
No, it's totally true. And whatever. Baseball wasn't for me. I'm not a sports guy,
Yeah.
So after that, my dad decided, you know what? I want you to play an instrument. And I was like, all right, I'll play the drums. He goes, nope, you'll play the guitar. And I was like, okay, Dad, whatever you want. And then he brought home a nylon string acoustic guitar, which was really hard to hold and play. But I got the hang of it a bit. And it really, like, I don't know, man, it stuck. It stuck more than anything. I was really, really invested. I was really, truly, I was really interested in learning how to make sounds that I heard on records.
And that must be the thing then, because if you were truly into baseball, you would have gotten over the loss and continued to grow and continued to play. But you're a musician.
Right. That is definitely the case. Yeah, you're right. 100%, because there have been many losses, and there have been many challenges, and there have been many defeats as far as music is concerned, but I keep doing this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what keeps me going. I don't know. I have to do it. I have to play music. I have to write songs. More than anything, I have to write.
Do you ever think that maybe you're cursed as far as vehicular accidents go?
You know what? Here's the interesting thing. There was a period of time where it wasn't only me that thought I was cursed, but my bass player, Mike, who's like, he's my best friend as well. He knows more than most my history with accidents. And the first one I would consider an accident was when I was 5 years old. My sister Gina took me for a joyride on a bicycle around the block a few times, and she was like going kind of wild. She was like swerving and swerving, and eventually my legs were going side to side, and eventually my leg got caught in the spokes.
Oh,
My foot got caught in the spokes, and the bike just screeched, and stopped, and now she's standing there, and she just starts stomping on the pedal. She's not much older than me. She's just being a kid and is trying to why isn't this bike going? She didn't think to look back. I'm not saying a word. I didn't say anything. And then I screamed because I fractured my leg.
oh my goodness.
And I that was the first time. So that was the first time I've been in a hospital. It's the first time I was hospitalized. They did all these x-rays. I was, it was my first experience breaking a bone and having some kind of accident that had to do with something with wheels. And then the accident 10 years later, the skateboard accident where I got hit by a car in the rain and the lady left me there. And then 8 years later, from that year, 8 years, now 8 years later, I get into that head-on collision with my ex Diala. And then 6 years later, I get into the huge accident with Candiria.
Yeah.
So at that point, I thought, this is it. It's going to be another 4 years, another 2 years, and then when I get to 0, I'm going to be dead. That was my theory. And Mike was like, oh my God, imagine if this is true, you're fucking cursed and blah, 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 blah. But thank God, after the Candiria accident happened, I'm knocking on wood. So far, so good. I'm all right. I'm in the clear.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Yeah, I was going to ask, has there been another accident since? But hopefully the Candiria van accident was it. Now that's a pretty highly publicized accident, and the image is burned permanently into my brain because, of course, the aftermath of the van was the cover of the 2004 Candiria album, What Doesn't Kill You. Talk about that accident. Now, John, I too have survived a tractor trailer car accident.
Oh my God.
So I know how insane it can be. Tell us some of your experience and how the band got through it, because it sounded like a painful and long healing process for you and for the band.
Yeah. Well, I'm the fortunate one. I'm the fortunate one out of the bunch, not in the injury sense. I might have been either the worst or the second worst to Eric. But my fortune was I was laying down with my head toward the back where we were hit. And when we were hit, my head must have hit the back of the back of the van or whatever. And I was knocked unconscious immediately. And I didn't experience the impact and the insanity that if you ask Mike the same question, he will tell you that it was one of the it's the most violent thing he's ever experienced. I couldn't imagine what it must have been like to be in a van that's flipping several times. I can't even imagine what that's like to be in basically a spinning, turning thing made of metal and everybody's flying around and my body's flying around. And I can't even possibly imagine that. The other fortunate thing was, and I think this is one of the things that saved my life, was I was ejected from the vehicle. I was ejected along with 3 other of my band members. I think Mike was ejected, Eric was, and I believe Ken was as well. Eventually, 4 of us were ejected from the vehicle. The only 2 people that were left in the vehicle were Carly and our driver, Kevin. And I don't remember anything. Oh, I have one memory of a man leaning in toward me. He must have stopped. He must have seen what happened, got out of his car, and he was comforting me and talking to me and making sure that I was breathing at least. and I believe he put a jacket under my head. And then it was the brightest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was like the warmest, brightest morning I could ever imagine. It was like I was born on the highway. It was really weird because they say you see a light when you die or something like that, and I totally understand that now. Like, I get it. I get what that light might be. Maybe it has nothing to do with dying and going to heaven, but it has something to do with losing consciousness or coming close to death or something like that. I don't know. But I was considered dead by the rest of the band. They all thought I was dead. So I don't know. There's something there with that, maybe. So then I black out after this man comes and puts a jacket under my head. And the next thing I know, I'm being smacked in the face by a doctor, someone. I can barely, I'm not waking up, and they had to like smack me and revive me. And they like are smacking me and waking me up and saying, John, 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 you have to wake up. You have to wake up. And I come to, and I'm like, what happened? They were like, well, you were in an accident, a really, really bad accident. And you're okay, you're fine, but you have broke some bones, but you're going to live, you're going to be fine. But we have to give you a catheter, and you have to stick a tube up your nose and down my throat and down your throat. And I was like, I don't care about the catheter, but you're not sticking a tube up my nose, down my throat. And they forced me. And it was like fighting these guys. And Ken was in the other room, and he yelled at me, and he yelled across the room. He said, man up, man up. I had to fucking deal with it. Now you do. So I did. I manned up, and I just fucking straightened out. It was good to hear his voice, even though Ken was a very nurturing, but like in a way he had this he was always like this fatherly sort of, I don't know. He played that role in the band. He looked after everyone in a lot of ways. He was sort of like the, I don't know how you put it. He was the authority on a lot of things. I mean, he drove us everywhere. He got us everywhere. He was a better musician than anyone else in the band. I mean, he was the only one who knew how to record music properly for the most part. So he was really a big authority. So to hear him, encouraging me to just deal with it was important. And I'm thankful. Once again, Ken always comes through.
It really is a miracle. I mean, multiple members of the band ejected from the van, laying on the highway, and we all survived. And it's unbelievable.
It really, really, truly is unbelievable. It really is. It's a miracle to me that no one is in a wheelchair. No one is dead. I still play music. I'm not perfect. I mean, I know Mike isn't. I know Mike has severe issues with back pain, to the point where there are days where he just can't get out of bed. And so I know we all suffer still from these injuries, but it's a miracle that we can. It's a miracle that can wake up and I can go to work and I can do what I do and I can hold a guitar and play chords and play music.
Did it change your outlook as a whole, or just the way you perceive things?
For me, not as much, because, as you know, this was already my fourth serious accident. And
you're like a veteran. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were two others that were not as serious, but, just as impactful. You know what I mean? Like getting in an automobile accident is no, it's always shocking. It's always intense. It's always painful. It's always violent, so for me, it didn't change my perspective much, but I think maybe because it also happened to my best friends, it was hard, you know what I mean, to see them also suffer so much. But at the same time, we all survived, and it's a miracle, and to not be grateful for that miracle is also kind of strange, you know what I mean? To not be like, holy shit, we should not be here. We should be dead. And we could all potentially have been dead from that, and none of us are. So I think obviously it affected the music, because we wrote a way more emotional album, and we named it "What Doesn't Kill You," and it was all about survival. It's all about getting through that, and like taking it from there, basically. not that the lyrical content, exactly pertains to the accident and all the stuff that came along, with but it just, it was like, I don't know. Still, that was the overarching theme was the accident, getting through it.
And how could it not be?
Yeah, of course. Something that traumatizing and intense happens in your life, and you're an artist, you're going to make art about it. That's how I deal. That's how I process, so.
So you left the band initially around that time, correct?
I did. I left the band for about 8 months in total, I think in 2005. I was on the road, and I was going through some heavy relationship stuff, along with heavy addiction at this point to opiates, because now that I had all of these injuries, I was definitely leaning on any kind of substance I can get my hands on. And we were also talking about, this is a year after 9/11 that the accident happened. So something so traumatizing as 9/11, and you're dealing with it the year next, which is, it's like PTSD, of course, the next year comes around, and 2 days after 9/11, of the next year, we get into this accident. So it was like all of these things that were just so intense. So I was dealing with things in my own way. I was trying to deal with them in my own way. But at the same time, I think I would have stayed on the road if I was playing music that I was really thrilled about, because there are certain things on What Doesn't Kill You that I really did not want to write. I didn't want to play these songs. I thought they were contrived to some degree. I thought they were produced in a way that wasn't right, basically, for Candiria and our journey as a band. That's just me, and I've come a long way, and I really understand now that it's like, this is a band. It's not about me personally. I mean, I know that sounds obvious, but when you're writing music, and you're playing in a band for so many years, you really hold sort of a certain amount of artistic integrity. It was extremely important to me, the integrity aspect of it, and being an artist, being a true artist, and also sort of, in a sense, defying what we had built, in a way, because our whole thing was, we didn't write choruses, or if we did, it was, something like Without Water from 300% Density. There may have been a chorus in that song, but it sure as hell wasn't a bunch of like chords, like C chord to E chord or this or that. It was our own style of it. And I felt like at this point, we were doing things that we wouldn't have done had we not been, if we didn't feel we were put under a certain amount of pressure by certain people. And that's really what it was. We were working with a producer because of certain circumstances, particular circumstances pertaining to our record contract.
So they wanted hits.
They wanted this guy, David Bendeth, who I really do at this point. I think he's great. He's awesome. He was just trying to do what he felt was best for Candiria. He didn't have any bad intentions. He had great intentions. And if you look at Spotify and you look at Apple Music, his intuition was, in a way, 100% correct, because the most popular songs that, you'll see up there are the songs that he recorded. You know what I mean?
I think as a band, you have to take risks if you're around as long as you guys are, because I don't know, if you do the same thing forever, that might not work out, and you take a big risk. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Like, I think you have to take risks as an artist.
Oh no, 100%, 1,000. I mean, at the time, I couldn't understand why we were doing what we were doing, but now you're right. That's exactly what it is. I still, think of those songs. Do I now love those songs? Do I think those songs are great? No, I don't. But I also, it's just a song. It's never going to define me. It's never going to define Candiria. It's never going to really, it's just a song. And, like you said, you take risks. Some of the risks work out. Some of them don't. And in a way, these risks worked out, and in a way they didn't. But I digress, honestly. The point was, I left the band, and the reason why was because these songs we were playing the moves we were making. Our manager was Kid Rock's manager. We were getting involved in a scene, or we were trying to get involved in a scene that we had really no business being involved with. And we left a record label like Century Media. And I don't know, we were just making moves. We started doing things because people had like these delusions of grandeur, basically. And I just wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be in a band that made art. You know what I mean? We made music, and because it was art. So I felt personally that what we were doing was sort of, it just wasn't right for me personally. It didn't sit right with me. And with that and the relationship stuff and whatever drugs I was doing, I just was like, I need to get off the road. I don't feel good about any of this. I'm not in good shape. I'm not healthy. I need to get off the damn road and just go figure my own shit out. I want to make my own music. I want to do my own thing. And so that's what I did.
Now, I want to talk about your upcoming record, Thunderheads, as well shortly. But
Sure.
talk about, before we jump into that, talk about some of the creative process with Candiria, because it's such a unique band, such a unique sound. I mean, how does this sound come together?
Well, that's an interesting question because there's many ways songs come together for Candiria. Um, Generally, that's the cool thing about being a guitar player in Candiria is that you get to write a lot of stuff. You really do, because a lot of it starts with guitar ideas, guitar riffs, guitar, parts, and or like a bunch of parts string together. And then those parts are presented to Ken first and foremost. Not a bass player, not Mike. Mike is usually the last piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't make it any less important. It's actually the most important part of it, in my opinion, because Mike added a dimension to Candiria's music that no one realizes that what Mike was doing was probably making the music like way more dimensional. You know what I mean? Like he was adding these like he would write parts that somehow connected with the drums, but obviously also connected with the key of the song, and sometimes with the key, sometimes without it, sometimes not with, not in key. He was doing something intentionally dissonant, but the process would go like that. It would be like guitar. First, it would have to be approved by Carly. That's first and foremost. Carly would have to be like, yes, I like these guitar ideas. I like what you're doing. I think I could do something really cool with that vocally. Let's get you and Ken in a room together and let's start working on drum beats. And that would be the second thing that would happen. And at that point, that's when Carly would start to come in and he would sit in at rehearsals or writing sessions, basically. And him and Mike would sit and slowly they would build. Carly would write verses, and slowly but surely, Mike would then build his bass lines. And eventually it would get buttoned up. Like in the end, like things would finally start coming together. And then maybe Carly would have, because his, his lyrical themes or this or that would, he said what he had to say, let's cut this part down, or I need to say more about this, let's extend that part. So arrangement stuff would happen. And then eventually we would record a demo, or we would do some kind of recording and get it ready and start playing it live.
And some of the more interesting elements, we incorporate hip hop, we incorporate jazz. Who does that come from? How do you guys start doing that? It's a very unique and great sound.
Thank you. A lot of the jazz stuff, admittedly, is Ken. He was really the jazz guy. At least in the early on the early records. When I got into the band, I started writing jazzy, like some of the jazz stuff too, as well as Mike. Everyone did. Even Carly, even Eric. Carly would be like, I want to hear a horn, line here. I want to hear a trumpet solo. I want to hear a saxophone solo. He would get involved in that way. Carly was really like, he wanted to be on the production end of things. He didn't want to just be a singer. But I would say, like, for the most part, when it came to the jazz stuff, Ken was really in charge. Even if it was something that I wrote or Mike wrote or someone else in the band wrote, Ken would take that part and he would work on it and he would learn it and he would develop keys and or horn parts, and he would develop all kinds of stuff around that. The hip hop stuff, that was really a combination of Carly, Eric, and Ken. They would produce songs. they would produce songs either by conversation, or either Ken would write a beat and Carly would have an idea for a sample or a loop, or he would have a verse idea or a chorus idea. Eric was constantly in the mix with that stuff, producing, helping, writing, editing, doing whatever. And that was a big part of it for the hip hop stuff. For me, I never, although I love all the hip hop stuff we've done in the past, it just was, you can't, how many people are you going to have writing a hip hop tune? There's only one on the damn album, or two at the most.
Yeah.
So it was like, for me, that was the part of the recording session stuff that I kind of like happily just stepped to the side and let these guys do their thing. Because, I think that the one thing that I feel about, like, even though we kind of stopped working on hip hop tracks throughout, like, after What Doesn't Kill You, like for Kiss the Lie, for While They Were Sleeping, like even Carly was like, the hip hop stuff, like, let's just not do it, anything like that for the next record. It just didn't, I don't know. Carly's taste changed, just for many reasons. We all just were like, because what the thing was, like, I think initially what Carly's idea was to form some type of hip hop collaboration sort of group that actually performed. And it just never took shape. And then I think he felt people expected it, on every album. And I think that was another thing that like kind of annoyed him too. He was like, you know what? It's just like, yeah, we're going to throw another fucking hip hop track on this album too. It was just like a little too predictable. So eventually that kind of got sort of phased out. Who knows though? Might come back to it.
You never know. I mean, the band incorporates a lot of great elements, and I like that the band really stands on its own in terms of sound, but everybody liked it. Candiria was a unifying band, at least in my scene growing up. There was it was kind of like city versus suburbs, hardcore purists versus people who like the more progressive stuff, but everybody liked Candiria.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
So let's talk about your record that you've got coming up. You've got a new record under the name LaMacchia. It's called Thunderheads.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard the advance. I love what's going on. It's very good electronic influence, rock and roll. Think Autolux, think Radiohead. I really like what's going on. Talk about how this was conceived. Talk about putting it together.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words. Before I joined Candiria, and throughout all of my time in Candiria, I never stopped writing songs. I never stopped writing rock songs or like ambient songs or electronic music. I'm always writing. I'm always going to do it. It was really, I always mention this because it's true. Frank Godla came to me one day just before, like, I would say a year before pandemic. So let's say sometime in 2019 or so, he came to me and he said, "Hey man, it's great that Candiria is doing things and you guys are active again and you put out a record and all." I goes, "But why don't you take your solo music seriously? Why aren't you, your Spylocopa project? Why don't you play live? Why don't you do anything with that? It's great. It's great. You should be doing something with that." And, I really respect Frank a great deal as a musician, as someone, as a business person, as someone who, he's an entrepreneur and he's a very smart guy, and he has, and music is this dude's whole life. So I didn't take that lightly. I really didn't take that lightly. And then when he even took it one step further and he said, "Look, I want to be the drummer. And I want to be in charge of production. I want to put on the stage shows." I was like, this is insane. This is great. This guy wants to, he wants to like invest his time. I was blown away by it. I really was. And, I really truly was blown away by it. So that was really the start of it for me to just be like, cause I was always putting out records under the Spylocopa moniker. I have been doing that for a very long time, for 20 some odd years. So to me, it was just like, okay, I'm just going to make another record, whatever. Or, we're going to play some of these songs, and I was psyched about it. But for him to make that offer and to get into a studio and start working with him, it really put a flame under my fucking ass, basically. And it made me sort of really reconsider what I've been investing my time into. And I decided that it was time for me to let go and stop sort of carrying the torch for Candiria as long as I have, and maybe Candiria can be sort of like the side project, and maybe my music can take the front seat. So I really started taking it seriously, and I was like dead set on like, making records and just now being a solo artist, and that's that. Now the second part of it was, why I stopped using the Spylocopa name and I started using my own name. What wound up happening was I picked up management, Chris Enriquez, from the band Spotlights, his own music project now, Light Tower, and he's also over at Revolver. He took an interest in a song that I put out called It's All Over Now, which is on the album, which is actually going to come out on the album. He insists it's on the album, even though it came out already. He was in love with this song. He was absolutely obsessed with it. I mean, he really loved it so much. And he was like, I want to manage you. I want to manage because I'm starting to manage. And he goes, and if you're going to do this thing and you're going to go solo and you're going to make an album, I want to be a part of it. And now there's another person. I'm like, holy shit, this is insane, man. Like these people are like, they're really like are coming out of the woodworks to be a part of this.
It must feel so good to have all of these people in your corner encouraging you, because usually I'm putting something together and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And people are like, okay, or nothing. But like you've got all this wonderful support.
Right, exactly. And you it's really true, man. You need that. You need that encouragement. At least I do. I need it. Some people don't need anybody. Don't need shit. They just do it. They're going to fucking do it.
I need encouragement on top of encouragement on top of encouragement.
I agree with you 100%. I'm the same way. But to have that encouragement and have that support just makes me like so dedicated, And so as far as the name goes, Chris starts managing me. And now he's talking to everybody about it. He's telling everybody, I'm managing John from Candiria now. He's putting out a solo album. He's going to put out a Spylocopa record, and I'm going to manage him. I'm going to get him on the road. I'm going to do this. And he had a conversation with a guy named Rob Gross. Rob Gross is in the music industry. He works for Shark Attack Records. He worked for BMI. He's been in the game many years. He's also well aware of Candiria. He's a fan. He's also very well aware of my music with Spylocopa music and everything. He was psyched to hear I'm making another record, but what he said to Chris was, he said, I think that dude needs to start thinking about rebranding because he's done so much with this and that. It's time he should start using his own name or something, or come up with something new. And when Chris called me and he said this, I was kind of annoyed. You know what I mean? I just was like, who the fuck? Who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck him. He'll laugh if he hears this. Trust me.
Do you, is that usually your first reaction? Like, even if the advice is good or I should take it, sometimes my first reaction is just fuck you or don't tell me what to do. Does that happen to you too?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And that was exactly what happened. And then I thought about it. I really did think about it. And the thing that came to my mind was the fact that anytime, I worked in the very beginning stages of working on the Spylocopa records. The first EP that came out, Greg Puciato came on and we collaborated and it was me and him. We made that EP basically. Jeff Kashid was a huge part of it. Julie Christmas got on a track, but really Greg and me, we worked together a lot on that. And, it was a great experience for me. I was a huge fan of Greg's voice and blah, 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 you get it. But, Greg only worked on that one EP. After that, he really disappeared. Julie was on the full length, but basically what I'm trying to say is in that time period, in 2007, when I left Candiria and I was working on the Spylocopa music early on, Greg, Julie, and Jeff were involved in the project. Come 5 years later after that happened, they were gone. So by the time I'm putting out records in 2016, 2018, everybody keeps bringing up their names. And I'm like, these guys have nothing to do with this anymore. And it was that idea that I just couldn't shake these other names. It's not that I love all of them. I love Greg still, Jeff. These are my friends, but they have nothing to do with the music project anymore. And it's just like they always come up. And I don't mind if they come up in this way. This is an organic thing. We're having a conversation. But every single article, their names would be mentioned. And I'm like, it irked me because they're no longer involved. You know what I mean? And I imagine it even irked them to some degree because what the hell are their names getting mentioned for? They have nothing to do with this, and they haven't for many years. And that was really the thing to me. I was like, this is what I think Rob is talking about, because the music that I'm putting out, and I have been putting out for the past, I don't know, 8 years, has absolutely nothing to do with these other people. So at that point, I was completely convinced that I wanted to use my own name. And then Aqualam, who I just got involved with, they completely agree with it too. They were like, this is a great idea. Definitely use your name. And they were like, we don't even want you to use your first name anymore. We want to just use LaMacchia. It's such a cool name. It's such a cool word. It sounds great. And they got me like fucking psyched on this shit. So I was like, fine, I'm going to go with it. And then of course I make this decision in my mind, and Chris comes back. He's like, I'm kind of having second thoughts about this whole thing. I'm like, no way, dude. That's it. We're going with it. So he was like, all right, here we go. And it actually was a great decision, because if people are responding to it very, very well, and they're responding to it, people are, you know what I mean? And it is being accepted as something that is solely mine. There's new names that are attached to it, which I'm really, really excited about, and it's just great that it feels new. It feels right. So, I couldn't be happier with where I'm at right now as a musician.
Yeah, it's got to be fantastic. It's your own thing. It sounds like you're calling the shots. And what do you have planned? Is there going to be live shows?
Yeah. There actually were 2 live shows already. My manager hooked up the first one. I opened up for Spotlights and Shiner. What a way to step on the scene. Right?
Wow. Where was that?
That was at Elsewhere in Brooklyn. That was on March 3rd. And it was a sold out show. It was fantastic to play with those guys.
Wow.
And I just played another great show. Aqualam Presents. I did a show with all Aqualam bands, which was really, really nice. We did that on Easter Sunday, which was probably the best way to spend an Easter. I think I'm going to do it every year. It was just a fantastic thing to do. I mean, who gives a shit about fucking eggs and bunnies anyway? I'm sorry, kids. But we had another great show with another great turnout. We did it at Union Pool in Brooklyn, and I love that venue. So we were really, really psyched to get into that room. I've never played that stage, and the band loved it. We all just had a blast. We had an absolute blast.
Wow, some good gigs. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're going to do some more. We're going to do some more gigs. We're going to try to get on the road. We want to get on some festivals. We're going to do the whole thing.
So, folks, Thunderheads by LaMacchia comes out May 20th on Aqualam Records, and we have to get it. We have to. I have heard the advance. Take it from me. You want to hear this.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that so much.
So you'll have some more gigs in the work, right?
Mm-hmm. We do. We're doing a little East Coast run in early August. Before that, I might have a gig in the end of June. I'm still waiting to hear. I'm going to do some kind of little record release shindig thing, but I haven't really figured out where and when yet. And my other band, I play guitar for another band. These are 2 of my dearest friends, my friend Sylvia Herrera and Joseph Mirazzo. They're 2 of my dearest friends, like family to me, and they live around the corner. And I will say, during the pandemic, they basically were my only, well, besides Candice, who actually performs on the album and sings a song on the album. Your world, I'm sure you understand, like, how small everyone's world got whenever pandemic happened and we were locked down. So Joe and Sylvia were really like, if I was ever alone for too long, they would say, come over, we'll do like a social distance dinner, or we'll sit in the backyard and we'll, have a drink and we'll listen to some music. They really, really were like my saviors. But anyway, I digress once again. They have a alt country, folk, psych rock little music project, and I'm very thrilled to be able to play guitar with them.
What's the name of the band?
It's called Green Lady. They have an Instagram account. I don't think they update it often, but it's Green Lady, one word. But it's a really cool music project for me, because it's really, as you know, you've never heard any alt country on any Candiria albums. So it's an interesting departure for me. It's an interesting thing to like get involved with and play different styles of music. I'm always interested in learning new things as far as guitar goes, as far as music goes. So I think there will be some Green Lady shows in the spring into the early summer, and I look forward to that. I just wanted to plug Green Lady as well as the LaMacchia record.
Absolutely. We have to plug it all. You have a record label too, right?
Yes, I do. It's called Rising Pulse Records. I've been around for nearly 15 years, putting out vinyl records and CDs and cassettes and merch and limited run stuff. It's been quiet these days because I'm so busy with my record. But that's the cool thing about it. That's the cool thing about my label. It's a no pressure situation.
Yeah. What's the dynamic of your label? When's the last time you put something out? How involved do you get?
I'm the only one involved. It's all me. Occasionally, I will hire help, but it's very rare that I do. I haven't put out any releases this year yet. Last year, I think I put out one or two. It's just the type of thing that I use it. My record label gets used and abused. Let's just put it that way.
How
And
so?
it gets used, abused, and neglected. Because I use it whenever I need to put a record out or I need to, say there's like I'll give you an example. This guy Virgil from France, a friend of mine, he owns an independent record label called Tentacles Industries. He bought the rights to Candiria's 300% Density. He licensed it from Century Media, and he pressed up 500 copies of the album. And I was like, well, there's no damn way you're putting that shit out without me being involved, because that record is so super important to me, and I want Rising Pulse Records to be a part of it. So I was able to work out a deal with him where the label got its own unique vinyl color that was only available through my label. And I was able to make like a t-shirt to go along with it and this and that. And, I got involved and I was able to be a part of something that I felt was really, truly like a cool experience, because 300% Density is a very important album to me and a lot of our fans. And I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to help with the artwork, to help with the production end of it, to help with making sure that the test pressing sounded great and everything sounded right. All of those little things, make sure the artwork looked great. And then to also have it come out through Rising Pulse Records. So in situations like that, no matter how busy I am writing an album or working on something for me, I want to make sure that my label gets involved in these types of things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I would have said the same thing you did. I would say, hey, this is my band. This is my record. I need to be involved.
Right, exactly.
Especially if I had a label. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, folks, let's recap. Here's what we want to do. Number one, if you somehow have not heard Candiria, you have to go and do that. That's number one, especially the records you are on, right, John?
Yeah, exactly. Anything from Beyond Reasonable Doubt on.
That's the sweet spot. Let's do it. But it's all great. Number two, we are going to purchase Thunderheads by LaMacchia when it releases in May, right?
Right.
We have to. And we have to go catch you live when you play.
Yes, absolutely.
And number three, we are going to check out the alt country band Green Lady that John is now a part of.
Right.
How about, I just had an idea, John. You mentioned that you've never played alt country before. What about on a new Candiria song, we do like a really alt country Southern fried intro into like the hardest breakdown you've ever heard. It could be the next generation of Candiria.
I bet you at this point, Carly would be like, yes, we're doing it.
I'm like totally serious. It sounds really awesome in my head.
Well, I guarantee you at this point, Carly would say, yes, let's try it. Screw it. We've done everything else. Why not?
All right. We're going to conference him in after this and spitball it. We'll see what happens.
All right. Awesome.
Well, John, you've created so much music that I love and continue to do so. And this was a fantastic conversation. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with me tonight.
Well, Keith, thank you. I really did enjoy it. And I really appreciate you taking the time and all the support throughout the years. I really do appreciate it.
There you have it, folks. John LaMacchia. Wonderful to talk to John. I've been waiting to talk to someone from Candiria since I started this show. Great stories. That was crazy. The stories about all the car accidents that he's been in. I didn't even really notice this while I was talking to him because I was in the zone, but that whole thing with he thought it was counting down to a final accident where he was going to be killed. The window of years just kept getting shorter and shorter. That's wild. That must have been really scary to deal with. I'm glad John and the band ended up being okay. I was so happy when Candiria started writing music again, because I got reinterested in them when they were gone, but then they came out with the Invaders 7-inch and they came out with the new full length in 2016 while you were sleeping. Got to see them live a couple of times again too, so very happy that that band is still active. Very happy that John is releasing this new record, Thunderheads, and realizing his personal dreams of releasing the solo work. I like everything I've heard. Make sure you check out the latest LaMacchia single as well, Angel's Delight. That was one of my favorites from the record. Love everything they're doing. It was great talking to John. Thank you, John, so much for coming on the show. Okay, so let's check in. How are we doing? Now, this has been a very, very active weekend. Folks, I have attended a gig, and I'm going to tell you about it right now. I saw Matthew Deere, Tycho, and Interpol at King's Theater in Brooklyn. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to King's Theater, but it is by far, I would say it's the most impressive venue I've ever been to. Gigantic indoor theater with all these intricate wood carvings on pillars, and there's a big balcony area. Unbelievable, and I don't usually go to shows this size. If you haven't been to the venue or if you have an opportunity to go, check it out. Really, really something. When I got there, Matthew Deere was wrapping up. I caught the last 3 songs. I really like what I heard, though. It was like electronic rock music, and he was singing over it. It was good. It was good. Tycho was direct support for Interpol. Now get this. Years ago, I had tickets to see Tycho in Philadelphia. And this is back when I was a mess, right? So I woke up and I was a mess, all banged up on drugs and alcohol, puking. Somehow I got on the Amtrak train to go down to Philly to catch the show. I was a mess on the train. I was a mess when I got off the train. I wasn't even going to go to the show. Somehow I pulled it together and dragged myself to the show. But I was so sick, I stayed for like half of a Tycho song and then just ended up going to my friend's house and staying there and going to sleep. So I missed them, and I never got to see them. And Saturday, the very day of my anniversary of being another year clean from drugs and alcohol, my friend texts me and says, "Hey, Interpol is playing tonight. Do you want me to put you on the list?" I was like, "Yes, absolutely. Put me on for tonight if you can." So, because of the kindness of my friend, on the very anniversary of my clean date, I got to go see this show, and I got to see Tycho for real for the first time, and I got to see Interpol. I've never seen Interpol before. This is a band I've loved since I heard them first back in, when was it, 2004, when I heard Turn on the Bright Lights for the first time. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The sound was massive and killer. Everything sounded perfect. I tell you what, I'm going to have to get into more popular music now that I'm 40 years old, because the seated shows are where it's at. Everybody was sitting down and chilled during Tycho. I got to enjoy the whole thing. But the thing that I hate is everybody stands up for the headliner. And why? Why? You have a seat. We could all be sitting down, relaxing, watching the band, but everybody stood up for the entire set, and there was people running in the aisles. There was random people coming down to where I was at and like trying to squeeze into where I'm sitting and bumping into me, and it was really irritating. But listen, I'm not going to complain. I'm so unbelievably happy that I had the opportunity to go to the show, and then I had a very full and amazing day. Earlier in the day, I was hanging out with my friend Robert Butcher, who has been on the show before. Check out his episode if you haven't heard it. There was a punk rock benefit show in Tompkins Square Park going on, so we were checking that out, seeing a couple bands, just hanging out, walking around. It was fun. And in stark contrast to last year around this time, which was pretty miserable. So happy that I had a very full day with friends, hanging out, seeing great bands. It was awesome. And yes, so like I mentioned, yesterday, Saturday the 14th, marked another year alcohol and drug free for me. And I don't think I've ever shared my story on the show before, so I'm going to do it now. I keep some details murky for reasons, but here's what I'm going to share. At the end of the road for me, I was in really, really bad shape. I had tried all of the things that people try: abstinence, substitution, just trying to stop everything, just trying to drink and not do anything else, medicine, psychiatry, moving. Nothing worked. I dipped my toe into 12-step stuff, but I just wasn't feeling it. And I was just too scared. I was too scared to actually make a change because my life had been just this mess and just relying on substances to get me through the day for so long that I didn't know there were other options. I didn't know it was possible not to feel this way. And I imagined that, once I stopped all that stuff, my life would be boring, and I didn't want to live the life of a normal person, which sounds crazy because my life in that state was boring. I didn't do anything. I didn't create anything. I didn't hang out with anybody. I just sat home and watched garbage on Netflix and got fucked up. Now that's boring. That is boring. So anyway, things got really, really, really bad, to the point where I wanted to just overdose and die or get arrested because nothing was stopping me. I couldn't stop myself. And I don't know, I knew I had to change. I knew something had to change, and I finally made the decision to commit to a life of recovery and do what I had to do. And it was not easy, and I got by with a lot of luck and a lot of help from other people. I got over my fear and finally started reaching out and asking for help and doing a lot of really uncomfortable things, doing basically everything that I hated the most to make sure that I stayed on the right path and got over everything. And, I don't like to go into all the specifics for various reasons, but if you're struggling and you need help, you can reach out to me directly and I'll tell you what worked for me. How about that? Is that fair? So, yeah, it's been tough, and I almost didn't make it along the way a couple times. I've almost relapsed a couple times. That was a while ago, though, back in my first year, and I don't know. I couldn't be happier with the way my life is going now. I actually have a life. I have friends. I have people I can count on. I'm creating things. I've done the record, the Basement Year record back in 2018. I was the lead in the play that my acting class put on. I have this podcast now. I'm starting a new band, and hopefully that's going to go somewhere. So there's just endless things to look forward to now and a lot of nice surprises in life. So it's just kind of funny to look back on it and think like, oh, I thought my life was going to be so boring once I gave up all the substances. But the complete opposite has proven to be true. So listen, if you're struggling and you're listening to this, you can do it. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it, because I was never going to stop. I was never going to stop. At minimum, I was going to binge drink for the rest of my life. And, I don't do that anymore. So wonderful weekend. Couldn't be happier. Now, we've got another new show coming up next week. I'm going to give you a hint. It's a band who put out an amazing record earlier this year. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to have to figure it out from there. So make sure you check back in. We're here every Monday morning at 9 a.m. with new episodes. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And until next time.